Welcome back, Mando.
Oh! Ho, ho, ho. Greetings, Bucketheads. Mavar Tagar. Welcome to our 314th loquaciously longing for the Lasat episode of Mandovision. I'm your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. We're so glad you're here. Find us on the socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter, Instagram, at Mandovision, at bluesky.com. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. And make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Bucketheads, we're back for another installment of our Star Wars Rebels rewatch series. And we are continuing to chug our way, burn our way, make our way through Season 2 of Rebels. And we are beginning to get a lot of background information on our characters. You know, insights into Sabine. This week, insights into Zeb. Zeb, the Lasat, the new species introduced in this series. Zeb Orielos, our guy. We've seen him in The Mandalorian. He's already been brought into live action. And as Dave Filoni has teased in the second season of Ahsoka, we will get a full-blown Rebels reunion. So hey, let's get into some background on our current favorite member of the Lasat species, as this episode begins to give us a little bit of background on who they are as a people in the galaxy. So really solid stuff in the episode. Again, I always like it when we begin to get the background on some of these sort of mysterious elements of things, because this show has a difficult challenge of driving the story forward, of having this narrative of rebel cells coming together to fight against the Empire. But they also have this family dynamic amongst the main characters here. And Zeb is sort of like the older brother character to Ezra. But like Sabine, is a bit shrouded in mystery. You know, we don't know a lot about his background. We don't know a lot about the Lasat as a people. Other than the fact that the Empire decimated them at some point after taking over the galaxy. So starting to pull back some of those layers in this episode. We're starting to get some of those bits of information that help us sort of resonate and connect to the characters a little bit more fully, which is always a good thing. Let's go ahead, get into our episode particulars for this week. It is Star Wars Rebels, Season 2, Episode 14, Legends of the Lasat. Original air date was February 3rd, 2016. Directed by Saul Ruiz, written by Matt Mishnowitz. Our primary cast for this episode: Taylor Gray is Ezra Bridger, Vanessa Marshall is Harrison Dula, Freddie Prinze Jr. is Kanan Jarrus, Tia Sakar as Sabine Wren, Steve Blum as Zeb Orielos, Dave Filoni is Chopper, D. Bradley Baker is Admiral Constantine, and you know, he's D. Bradley Baker, he does it all. David Oluwelo is Agent Callus, Gray D. LaSalle is Chava, Gary Anthony Williams is Gron, and Jim Cummings returns as Hondo Ohnaka. And I can't help it. I love me some Hondo Ohnaka, all right? Our plot for this week's episode: the rebels are stunned to discover two Lasat refugees, and together they must evade the Empire to get the Lasat to their prophesized new home planet. All right, Bucketheads. We're ready. Let's get into it. You know what that means. It is time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
So we start off returning to a familiar planet this time around. Returning to Nixus Hub 218, where we have seen As Morrigan in the past. And a place that we ran into Hondo Ohnaka. So, a big surprise when Hondo Ohnaka shows up in this episode. But the crew of the Ghost arrives at Nixus Hub 218 because Ezra has gotten a tip from one of his contacts, a mysterious contact, because no one knew that Ezra had contacts, about some refugees. And Ezra's sort of taking point on this. He's bringing the crew of the Ghost to get these refugees, and they're going to take off and get them the heck out of there. Well, as we find out through the course of the episode, the refugees in question are 2 Lasats who have been found by the Empire because, of course, Hondo's involved, and Hondo's double dealing as always because that's what Hondo does. But the crew of the Ghost quickly step in and dispatch the Imperial agents to recover these 2 members of the Lasat. Again, the Lasat are people who we've not seen a ton of in and around the galaxy up to this point, because of what the Empire did to what we believed up to this point was their home world of Lasan. And so the revelation of these 2 being around, and again, ones who are quite aware of who Zeb is. And again, I believe this is the first time we get Zeb's rank and full name as Captain Zarageb Orielos. And, again, so we get that moment where we begin to understand that this episode is about Zeb, and we're going to get information on his background that is vital to understanding who this guy is and where he's come from and how it sort of has shaped him in his fight against the Empire. But once the crew of the Ghost has recovered and saved Shava and Gran, we find out fairly quickly that Zeb has sort of complicated feelings about his own people and his role with them. And, Shava is a mystic. She's a prophet. She believes in Ajla, which is the Lasana version of the Force. And a quick side note on Ajla is that in the earliest drafts of George Lucas's Star Wars screenplays, Ajla was the name of the light side of the Force. That was to be countered by Bogon, the dark side of the Force. And these words and these terms were also incorporated into the book series, the Dawn of the Jedi series. There's the book by Tim Leben, and then the comic series by John Ostrander and Jan Drosema. So you can hear those words more frequently used in what's now considered to be Legends material, but sort of a nice callback to bring Ajla into the main canon as the name of the Force amongst the Lasat people, the Lasan, excuse me, and it's again just a nice kind of callback. But Zeb has real problems with mystics and the idea of prophecy and all these things. He turns his nose up to it very, very quickly, and Shava tells this prophecy of a new home world for the Lasan. It involves a child, a warrior, and the fool. And the interesting part of the prophecy is we learn down the road is that at various times in all of our lives, we play all 3 of those roles. We are the fool, the warrior, and the child. Maybe not necessarily in that order that I just said them, but it's an interesting piece of part of the prophecy, I suppose, is a better way for me to put that. What I do like about it is that it's forcing Zeb to kind of confront his perceptions of himself and who he is amongst his people and in his own eyes. Him examining himself viewing himself as the warrior, but being revealed to be the child of Lasan. It's really interesting. It says a lot about who he is. But he's not into the hokum. He's not into the junk. And so when Gran and Shava start chanting and engaging in all these different ritualistic prophecy type things, he wants nothing to do with it. He excuses himself pretty quickly. And it's when his little brother, quote unquote, played by, that part filled by Ezra, that we get some background on what Zeb has been through when the Empire came. And I want to go ahead and play that. Technical difficulties there. I want to go ahead and play that for you guys right now. Let's check it out as he sort of confesses. Confession is a strong word, but he shares his experiences of how he sort of views the idea that he failed his people.
As captain of the Honor Guard, I was responsible for protecting the royal family and every single Lasat. Their safety was my duty.
You couldn't have stopped the Empire.
I fought to the end. We held the palace, and And then there was a bomb. And when I woke up, it was all just gone. We retreated. I was as good as dead. At least until Kanan found me.
So Ezra is going to point out that Zeb has the opportunity now to step up and be there for his people now, and to sort of give him the opportunity to forgive himself by helping his people and not failing them another time, as he views his failure against the Empire. It's a really nice moment between the two characters who have a very sibling dynamic. I know I have sort of fast-forwarded across what happens on Nixus Hub 218. It's a lot of fun. It's a great sequence back and forth. Hondo double dealing. Saving the rebels, helping the rebels, getting them caught again, getting them in trouble again. Great back and forth with Hondo, as always, until Hondo gets caught. And then Hondo is the prisoner of the Empire. And Hondo is the reason why the Empire is able to follow the Ghost as they make their way to what the prophecies are calling Lira San, a new prophesized homeworld for the Lasat. And everything in this episode, I'll be honest, everything in this episode is very straightforward, but very fun and very interesting, and getting a small taste of the Lasat culture. I found it to be very enlightening, but I also liked getting to pull back the layers on Zeb, because Zeb is the muscle in the show. Zeb is the older brother, kind of like the lunkhead, but getting a taste of the emotional trauma that he's been through. Because of the Empire, and how he views what he considers to be his greatest failure by letting his people down because he couldn't single-handedly defeat the Empire. It's just very interesting. It's very interesting and very telling about the pressure that he puts on himself to be this great warrior, to be the person who can be relied on to step up and save the day. It's very, very fascinating, but after Ezra's conversation with him, he decides he's going to lean into the role of the child here for this prophecy. So he goes back in there with Shava and Gron and the rest of the crew of the Ghost, and we see his bow rifle in a different configuration than we've seen before. What they consider like the traditional Lasat configuration of the bow rifle, and the energy it emits and the way it plays amongst the starfield to kind of bring this prophecy to life. And it shows where Lira San is believed to be. So it's out in wild space, uncharted territory. So the crew of the Ghost takes off for it. They believe they have that they're following this prophecy. They're following everything along, and of course there's obstacles in the way. And the biggest obstacle possible is the imploded star cluster, a series of gravity wells that must be carefully traversed unless you want your ship shredded to little bitty pieces. But Zeb, of course, using his bow rifle yet again, is able to sort of navigate the Ghost via the energy of his bow rifle. There's a lot of mysticism in the episode. A lot of things kind of go unanswered as for practical explanations on things, but it's Star Wars. It's just like dealing with the Force. Sometimes you just have to accept these things. You have to roll with these things and understand that there is a greater power at work here. Ajla, the power of the galaxy, the spirit of the galaxy, all these things. So if you can't accept that, you are definitely going to have some trouble with this episode. So complicating matters is, of course, the Imperial presence. Callus has arrived at Nixus Hub 218. He is the one who brings Hondo aboard. They sort of cut something of a deal. I think Hondo is just trying to avoid Imperial prison at this point, and reveals that he has a tracking device, so they're able to follow the Ghost. Because Hondo's the one who gave him the transmitter that Ezra's been using to contact him. So, again, Hondo has wheels, the game within the game, the wheels within wheels, all that stuff. Hondo is playing chess, and sometimes Ezra's still just playing checkers. Fun moments between the two characters in the episode, and don't get me wrong, Hondo does not come off as like the bad guy of this episode by any stretch. Hondo's just very much doing Hondo things to continue to survive, as a person, the former pirate king of the Clone Wars era, who's now kind of on his own and fending for himself far differently than he used to have to do. So he cuts this deal with Callus. Again, I suppose in an effort to avoid Imperial prison time. because he has the tracker on the comm device he has with Ezra. So the Empire follows the Ghost to the imploded star cluster. Now, the Imperial cruiser cannot follow. It is too big. It is brushing up against these gravity wells and is starting to be torn to pieces. TIE fighters are getting destroyed. The blasters are going awry because they don't fly on the intended trajectories because of all the gravity distortions. So he lets them go. Callus lets them go, and they're to fall back. And his plan is to see them destroyed by the gravitational pressures of this imploded star cluster. Well, it's not to be, my friends, because, again, Zeb steps up, like we talked about a moment ago, uses his bow rifle and the energy field within it to sort of navigate these gravity wells in the star cluster. It's a neat sequence. Again, you have to take it all. It's a very mystical part of the episode, and you just have to sort of like trust in the Force, trust in the Ashla, all that good stuff. And Zeb sees them through to the other side where they find Lira San. And now we don't venture down to the planet. We stay aboard the Ghost with everybody else while Zeb takes Shava and Gron to the surface of the planet. And when Zeb returns, we find out that it's not, in fact, a new homeworld for the Lasat. It is, in fact, the original homeworld of the Lasat, that they ventured out from this hidden world into the Star Wars galaxy at large. And so there are many, many Lasat down there on the planet already, and their numbers are growing, and they are choosing to remain a hidden people at this point. Now, this episode really serves to set up a lot of things for down the road. And I think as a setup episode, this one does a lot to leave a lot of meat on the bone still for us to kind of get into down the road in further episodes. But it gives us a lot of insight into Zeb right now. And this ability of him sort of stepping up and delivering these two to Lira San, returning them home, essentially. You know, not a new homeworld, but the original homeworld of the Lasat. So I think it's a really strong episode in many, many senses. It's, you know, I want to give it eight buckets because I know the things that it sets up and some of the big things that are coming because this episode puts it all in place. Now, there's still a lot of information that we don't know. Like, we have no idea why the Empire went after the Lasat, whether it was because of their strong warrior culture, and so they were viewed as a threat, or if they had some sort of resource on their world that the Empire wanted for something. We've seen that recently. You know, it doesn't feel like the Lasat fell prey to the fate of the Wookiees. You know, they weren't captured and sold into slavery or anything like that, so they got that going for them, which is nice. But yeah, good stuff in this episode, really strong, and yeah, you can't help but enjoy this one. I think it's a fun one. I think it's a bit underrated as far as that all goes. So I think that wraps up my thoughts for the episode. You know, 8 buckets on this one. It's a good time. It gives us some background into Zeb, and it begins to foreshadow a lot of stuff that's coming up in future episodes this season and down the road. So a good time had by all. And with that, my friends, I think we are going to bounce out of here for the week. Thank you guys so much for the continued support. You guys are always the best. This is the Mandovision Podcast, and I am your host, Nargai Tom. Thank you for being here, again, supporting small independent Star Wars podcasts like us. Hit us up on the socials at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram, Mandovision at Blue Sky, and you can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If possible or so inclined, and listen on the Apple Podcasts, sweet 5-star reviews. All right, we are rolling into the summer months. I hope everyone had a nice, safe holiday, and the official kickoff of summer, you know, is here. So get ready. Conventions, Comic-Cons, maybe some more Star Wars news down the road. You will get that information. We will talk about all the things that happen here. Don't worry about that. You know, some interesting stuff coming up recently in the news. We will cover those things. We will talk about those things. Rian Johnson's been in the news. I debated how much to talk about that. It sort of is like a non-story in many, many senses. Him talking about how he wants to come back to Star Wars. He'd like to do some more Star Wars. And I'm okay with that. I have my feelings on The Last Jedi, but they aren't nearly as vitriolic as many others. I think Rian Johnson is a very capable storyteller. I actually enjoy the majority of Rian Johnson's films. So, my challenges with The Last Jedi aside, I'm game for more Star Wars from him. You guys know how much I like Star Wars, and I'm up for every flavor of it. So bring it on. More Rian Johnson Star Wars is always welcome for me. I know a couple listeners out there who will disagree with that statement heavily, but that's okay. That's what we're all here for. We're going to go out there, we're going to have a conversation, we're all going to have a chat, and we're going to be friendly and respectful and kind to each other, because that is the kind of Star Wars fans that we are here on Mandivision. That's what Buckethead Nation is all about, the camaraderie, the being vote with each other. That's how we roll on Mandivision. We have no time for toxic fandom, so let's just have civil discourse. It's cool to disagree, man. As long as you are kind and respectful to each other, disagreement is how understanding is achieved. So thank you, friends, for listening. Buckethead Nation, you are the best supporters in the world, in the galaxy, in the universe. And we'll be back next week to continue talking about Star Wars Rebels. But in the meantime, remember, this podcast, it can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
I suppose you'll be heading out.
I'm not.
You should.
It's against the creed. I gave you my word. I'm with you until we both fall.
You really buy into that bantha fodder?
I do.
Good.